If you're unfamiliar with Over the Garden Wall, I strongly suggest that you watch it, as it's a wonderfully deep story with imaginative characters and autumn ambience. I definitely plan on making it a Halloween TV tradition. So let's get started. The title of the show is believed to be inspired by an old children's rhyme that sings, "Over the garden wall, I let the baby fall. My mother came out and gave me a clout over the garden wall." The wall that Wirt and Greg scramble over actually belongs to a graveyard and not a garden. However, the name of the graveyard seen in episode 9 is Eternal Garden. This gives more sense to the background of the title, and it being based on a children's skipping rope poem simply adds to the 19th century spookiness of the show. The plot of Over the Garden Wall could have something to do with another old poem called Babes in the Wood. It references children being lost in the woods and being taken care of by birds. In episode 7, Auntie Whisper says to Lorna,
"I can smell them. I can smell the children in this house."
As Wirt and Greg are hiding in woven baskets full of turtles. Annoyed, Wirt states he's hardly a child and is in high school now. Greg responds with,
"Yeah, well, you still stink. Shh, you shh."
In this world, age matters little. The brothers are lost children wandering the unknown. In episode 2, Wirt declines Beatrice's offer to be taken to Adelaide of the Pastures. Instead, he leads the way towards a town called Pottsville, after reading its distance on an old wooden sign. Here the trio stumble upon a barn of townspeople with pumpkins for heads, dancing and celebrating the harvest under the supervision of their giant pumpkin-headed leader, Enoch. Enoch and the townspeople could be an allusion to Oz's Jack Pumpkinhead, referencing the shared dreamlike consciousness of Oz and the unknown place where Wirt and Greg are lost. In this episode, one townsperson tells Wirt,
"Aren't you a little too early?"
What do you mean?
I mean, it doesn't seem like you're ready to join us just yet.
perhaps referencing that this whole world is indeed the afterlife, or the passage to the afterlife, and Wirt and Greg are not dead yet. At the end of the episode, the townspeople unveil themselves as skeletons, proving that they, at least, are very much dead. Another indication that they're in some form of afterlife can be seen in episode 5, when Beatrice indicates that only 2 pennies are necessary to use the ferry that reaches Adelaide's pasture. In Greek mythology, 2 coins were placed on the eyes of the deceased so that they may pay Charon the ferryman and cross the river Styx to reach the land of the dead. Interestingly, if Beatrice hadn't reconsidered her trade with Adelaide, Wirt and Greg would indeed be crossing to their ultimate death, or at least something very similar. Beatrice herself is likely inspired by Beatrice from the Divine Comedy, a character who helped lead Dante from Purgatory and into the 9 celestial spheres of heaven. In episode 7, we meet a curious set of relations, Lorna and her Auntie Whispers, whose striking resemblance is a very clear reference to Yubaba in Miyazaki's Spirited Away. According to the website Observation Deck, both are witches who keep young girls as servants, and both have sisters who are also witches, as Auntie Whispers says to them,
"Beware of my sister Adelaide. She lives in the pasture. She must not be trusted."
Perhaps most interesting about this episode is the basket full of Edelwood turtles in Lorna's house. In the first episode, we discovered a dog had turned into a ferocious monster after eating an Edelwood turtle. Auntie Whispers eats a turtle from the basket Wirt and Greg are hiding in, but nothing happens to her. Could she be evil all along? Or could her being a witch prevent the turtles from corrupting her? Feel free to leave a comment if you have a theory on this. Auntie Whispers is one of my favorite characters due to her shocking appearance, inherent mystery, and later her altruism. She's voiced quite brilliantly by Tim Curry, and her design is based off a 19th century illustration of an old man with big eyes who looks like an owl. On the way to Adelaide's pasture back at the beginning of episode 4, the company reaches a tavern full of townspeople who warn them of the beast, and describe this monster as the wielder of the Dark Lantern. Here we begin to piece together the true intentions of the beast, later clarified in the final episode of the series. What exactly is the beast? There are quite a few theories on this subject. For example, Tumblr user Memoirs of a Maker theorizes that the beast may not be a tangible entity. The viewer never actually sees Beast move beyond the shadows, and neither does he have the ability to touch any of the characters. Memoirs of a Maker suggests Beast might actually be the forest's night air, further explained in episode 6 by Adelaide, who utters,
"What are you doing? The night air is poisonous."
Breathe it in, lady.
In the same episode, Adelaide reveals she's actually working for the beast.
"I do as he commands, the voice of the night, the beast of eternal darkness."
Both Adelaide and the beast operate by blackmailing their victims. Adelaide with Beatrice's scissors, and the beast with the woodsman's daughter. Since Adelaide works for the beast, she could have been trying to lure the lost children to offer them to him. While trying to capture Wirt and Greg, an hourglass shape can be spotted on Adelaide's shawl when she turns her back. This is the same shape that appears on the body of Black Widow spiders, indicating Adelaide is deadly and not to be trusted. Wirt seems to come to the realization that the beast's soul is in the lantern, which is effectively the same idea. However, this does not explain what the personification of the beast is. In my own opinion, perhaps the best theory on the beast entity is that he might actually be the lantern itself, personified as a shadowy figure to communicate with humans and frighten them into doing his bidding. Him being the lantern could also explain why he's not able to touch any of the humans. Even when Wirt is about to extinguish the light inside the lantern, he can only intimidate from afar. Him being darkness, or the nighttime as previously theorized, overrides the ongoing protective qualities of the forest night, like melting Adelaide. The beast might exist in darkness, but he's likely not actually darkness, as his goal is to keep the lantern lit, and the final extinguishing of it defeats him. The beast references, and may be inspired by, many different deities and entities. The Wendigo and Satan are among these entities. So what does beast represent? Probably our worst fears. For the woodsman, it was his daughter dying, especially when he believed there was a way to save her, or at least keep her alive. For Wirt, his worst fear is losing Greg, evidenced by him initially agreeing to be the beast's slave in order to save his brother, before realizing the stupidity of the deal and changing his mind. Since the beast represents fear, it would make sense that he cannot touch them, for we control our own fear. By extinguishing the light that keeps their worst fears alive, they were able to slay the beast that haunted them, and as a result, they were no longer lost. Throughout this series, Wirt encounters 3 women whom he displays at least some form of affection toward. The obvious one is his admitted crush, Sarah, for whom he openly pines for. The second is Beatrice, a character that shares undeniable chemistry with Wirt, and is actually a human cursed to live as a bluebird. The final character is Lorna, another cursed female who lives with the altruistic Auntie Whispers. Throughout Wirt's encounter with Lorna, he offers to help her finish her chores early so that she may escape her aunt. Wirt can be seen bashfully glancing at Lorna a few times and blushing when they make eye contact. Despite Wirt's displays of affection for any female character, the story doesn't conclude with a romantic ending. This is a good indicator that Over the Garden Wall sought to revolve around the relationship between Wirt and his little brother, who he repeatedly expresses annoyance toward. He also expresses a problem with his stepfather, who is Greg's real dad.
You ruined my life.
Who, me?
Ugh, you and your stupid dad!
But by the end, none of these problems seem to matter, and Wirt gazes fondly at his little brother from his hospital bed, proclaiming Greg's frog is their frog. This is one of the great qualities of the show, the relatable quality of Wirt's problems and how he faces them on their journey throughout the unknown. Wirt seems to be the primary character for development, as Greg remains the same silly optimist throughout, leading me to believe that Wirt's transition from boyhood to adulthood is the main focus of the story. In the final episode, Wirt wakes up in the hospital surrounded by friends and loved ones. This, of course, is heavily reminiscent of The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy awakes to find her adventure was all a dream. However, the theory that Wirt and Greg's journey was all in their mind can be disproved by the bell stuck inside Greg's frog. The bell was swallowed by the frog inside the unknown.
He ate the witch's magic bell when—
Fine, do something!
Reddit user SysSaber theorizes maybe the bell is a celestial boon given to those who completed their hero's journey. It's a cool theory. As a side note, according to the cartoon's official Tumblr page, the Frog Funderburker and the Boy Funderburker spell their surnames differently to avoid confusion. The writer of the show, Patrick McHale, claims he designed the awkward Jason after himself. At the very end, we're glimpsed an epilogue of sorts, showing each prominent character's happy ending. The woodsman is bathed in the light of a first quarter moon. Weirdly enough, this is not the only time we see a half moon. In fact, if the moon is shown both in the real world and the unknown, it's a first quarter moon. According to astrograph.com, in astrology, during this phase, you're a willful builder of new structures for yourself and society, and characteristically exert the utmost effort in order to achieve your goals and bringing new forms into reality, even in the face of resistance. This move forward must inevitably be accompanied with struggle. To conclude with perhaps the cutest theory of all, any theory blog of Tumblr writes, I have a theory that after the events of the story, Wirt would often poke his head into Greg's room to make sure he was still there.